What's up, my Yu-Gi Bros? I'm Heroes, the one, the only, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. Those of you who have been watching my channel for long enough know that I have a Fallout Shelter deck for when formats just get a little too screwy for me. And that deck is my Hunder family deck. This is what I took to Nationals. This is in 2013 versus Dragon Rulers. This is how I got to Nationals in 2013. And it's just kind of a deck that I often make when the format gets really screwed up and I feel like I want to make a deck that kind of does its own thing without worrying too much about what the opponents do. So let's get down to it. First, we start off with our 3 Thunder Seahorse, searches out everything else. We've got 3 Watt Cobra and 3 Watt Giraffe. Watt Pheasant has really bad matchups this format, so I'm not running it. These are the engines of the deck. Watt Cobra searches out your Watt Giraffes. Watt Giraffe stuns your opponent for the rest of the turn, so you can make free Xyz plays and things like that. Then we have our 3 Hunder and 2 Hunder. The Thunder family lineup in this version of the deck is really low because they are not the focus of the deck. They are just a way of using your Watts to their best advantage. Then you run 2 Vylon Prism. Vylon Prism is really great because Crimson Blader is probably the best meta call this format. It's just a really great card against Qliphorts and against Shadows. 3800 Crimson Blader, because it gains the attack from Vylon Prism, gets over Qliphort towers really easily, and then your opponent can't summon any monsters next turn. It makes your deck able to make beefier monsters than Qliphorts can make. And also, Thought Ruler Archfiend with this on top of it is really good against Burning Abyss because they have very few outs to it. Some run Raigeki, some run the Monarch Stormforth, but for the most part they don't really have a lot of outs for Thought Ruler plus Vylon Prism. Then we have the obligatory Honest to round out the monster count. Let's move on to the spell and trap cards. We start out with 3 Duality. You don't do a huge amount of special summoning in this deck, and being able to get that set up is really nice. And then, you know, with the number of defensive cards in this deck, you can really afford to lose a turn off of this deck. Speaking of defensive cards, 3 Messenger of Peace. Messenger of Peace has really good matchups this format, particularly against Qliphorts. They just really can't get around it. Then we move on to the 3 Recycling Batteries. This card is one of the most important cards in your deck. A lot of people say that Thunder Seahorse is the best card in your deck, but I actually sided out Thunder Seahorse at Nationals last year. I think Recycling Batteries is the most important card, though, because it allows you to recycle your monsters. You know, if you've used a Hunder and a Watt Giraffe, then later in the game you can use Recycling Batteries to turn into an invincible Xyz monster by summoning the Hunder and then the Watt Giraffe attacking directly and making sure your opponent can't do anything for the rest of the turn. It's just a really great card. It allows you to go for things like Crimson Blader and Thought Ruler late in the game. It's the best card in the deck. Then we have 2 Forbidden Chalice. This was something I used at Nationals, and it's still something that I think is relevant today. If you're going against the Shadow matchup, or the Burning Abyss matchup, or the Satellar Knight matchup, you can use this to get rid of their monster effects. I don't like Breakthrough Skill in this deck because you can't use it during your first turn, which means that artifacts can mess you up pretty hard. Then we finally run 2 MSTs. This is really important in the Qliphort matchup. I'm considering running 3 and taking out a Forbidden Chalice. Our trap lineup starts off with 2 Threatening Roar, blocks your attacks, allows you to get another plus off of Watt Cobra for a turn. I have been considering taking this out for 3 Magic Cylinder, once again because of the Qliphort matchup where they make really big monsters while burning themselves, and you can just Magic Cylinder them over and over again. And the great thing about this format with Magic Cylinder is not a lot of decks attack with multiple monsters in a turn, so you can just use 1 Magical Cylinder to protect yourself for a turn while you don't have Messenger of Peace. Then we've got 2 D-Prisons. D-Prison is removal, and it is more defensive plays. You really don't need to stop your opponent's plays because you don't really mind anything except them going into battle, and D-Prison is really good in basically all the matchups this format. 2 Vanity's Emptiness, fairly self-explanatory. Then 1 Compulsory and 1 Solemn Warning. And finally, our 2 trap holes, Time Space and Bottomless. A lot of people say that Bottomless is really bad this format, but I really disagree. It's really good in the Shadow and the Qliphort matchups, because this gets rid of things like their Construct. It gets rid of the Qliphorts, you know, when they summon a Helix or a Carrier. And then you can Bottomless. It's really good in the Satellar Knight matchup. I just, like, the only bad matchup for Bottomless is Burning Abyss, and it isn't even that bad in the Burning Abyss matchup. And then Time Space Trap Hole is good against every matchup this format. Let's move on to the side deck, and then I'll give you guys the extra deck last. We start off with 3 Maxis. Good against Satellar Knights, and is good against Burning Abyss. One more Vylon Prism for more Crimson Blader and Thought Ruler plays against Burning Abyss and against Qliphorts. One Thunder King because it's really good against Qliphorts and Burning Abyss. And one Paw Hunder in order to facilitate more plays with that third Vylon Prism. Then for our spell, we have one Mind Control because a lot of decks this format run around level 4s. Qliphorts have level 4 monsters basically, and so you can Mind Control a Qliphort monster and then overlay with it, and that's a lot of fun. We've got 3 Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors because the Shadow matchup is probably the hardest one. Burning Abyss is okay, but you really want to get as much utility against Shadows as possible. 2 Stygian Dirge against Burning Abyss and Satellar Knight. I can't run Light Mirror against Satellar Knight, so I run this instead. 2 Malcats for the Qliphort matchup. So when they go into the battle phase, which they almost always do, you can wreck their back row, including all their skill drains and their emptiness and their tool. And you don't run a huge amount of back row in this deck, surprisingly enough, except Messenger of Peace. And then finally 1 Soul Drain. Let's move on to the extra deck. We start off with our 2 Abyss Dwellers, because one of the things that you want to do early on in the game against Shadow or Burning Abyss is make an Abyss Dweller so that they can't get over your Messenger of Peace. It doesn't really matter that Abyss Dweller itself can't get over Messenger of Peace. In fact, it's really great because if Abyss Dweller can't get over Messenger of Peace, then monsters that can destroy Abyss Dweller can't get over Messenger of Peace. So you put down the Abyss Dweller and you keep your opponent from destroying the Messenger of Peace while you poke with your Watt Cobras and Watt Giraffes. Then you have 1 Ragna Zero because it's good against Qliphorts, 1 101, 1 number 20, or number 82, that's the one, Heartland Draco. Really good for clinching games. If your opponent has set up a board and you've still got Watts, you can just overlay for the number 82 and you can attack directly if you don't, have enough Watts to kill them. This plus a Watt is at least 3,000 damage, and that's a huge amount in the Qliphort matchup. Then 1 Castell, Exciton Knight, Emerald for recycling things like Thunder Seahorse and Watt Giraffe, 1 Starleech Paladynamo. This is really good for a closing move. You can knock down a monster to 0 attack and then attack over it. And 1 Constellar Omega for the Satellar Knight matchup. And for our Synchros, we have 1 Scrap Dragon, 1 Stardust Spark for Spark Emptiness, 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend. This card is amazing in the Shadow and Burning Abyss matchup. In fact, it's even better in the Qliphort matchup. You can just put down this guy against Burning Abyss or Qliphorts, and they basically don't have any main decked outs for it. They have to use Skill Drain in order to get rid of it in Qliphorts a lot of the time. It's just very difficult for them to get over, and in Burning Abyss they just really do not have outs. And then finally 2 Crimson Bladers for the Qliphort matchup. Before I go, there's one last plug I have to put in. We only have one more day of voting, and DualRock88 is still steadily gaining votes while I am not so much. But all it takes is for every person who is watching this video to take 5 seconds to click on the link in the description below to find my video, hit that thumbs up button to vote for me, and it's basically guaranteed that I will win this round of the contest, which means that I will win the contest overall. But that's only if everybody who watches this video hits that thumbs up button on the link in the description below. Thank you guys for doing that. I got a jet. See ya.